The title was a great discussion between not only Jasami and Jasami's team, but also with my friends and my family. Furs as a name, I think, is quite striking. And that initially was something that I had at the start of my novels. Furs as a title, it's poignant, it's powerful, and it represents the main protagonist of the story, Keith Furs. But there was something more that had to go on here. And through my conversations with Jasami and the team, we looked at iterations of including World War I so that people knew the time period that it was in, of putting in the words memoir or diary so people understood where it came from. And that was balanced with a lot of my creative colleagues or creative friends who said, let's bring some poetry into this. Let's make it more mysterious. And let's try to draw people in to understand why this title is here. And a great friend of mine who's a composer, and I asked his advice on how he actually names his music. Because in his mind, he came up with great themes on a story that just came out of lyrics. And I wanted to know what was the background to all of his titles. And he gave fantastic advice, which I'll give him complete credit for, where he said, what are the main themes in your novel? And what words does Furs use that really define him? And I've previously mentioned that his vocabulary is quite unique, and he terms his, what we would say partner today, as his sweetheart. Now, when do you hear anyone talk about sweethearts in today's society? It's really moving and it's painfully emotional. And that is a big part of the novel, is his growing passion and adoration, blossoming into love for his sweetheart Dor. So that forms suddenly a part of the title, Sweethearts. And it had to have therefore something complementing it. In my mind, the rest of the novel is about not only the highs, but the lows that people at the time went through. And Furs went through some extraordinary lows. And the word swan song came to mind in the many characters and the many lives that Furs interacts with in this brief 6-month period that get lost and eventually disappear into the background of the World War I. And they mark the swan songs that we have in the title now. So I thought that counterbalanced really beautifully to bring poetry to the novel, a mystery to ask, why is it called Sweethearts? Why is it called Swan Songs? And when you read the novel, you'll understand that, of course, love and death are two of the prime aspects of life that we can never really escape from. And they intertwine with everything we do. We perhaps want one more than the other, but inevitably, we will be touched by both in the period of our lives. I hope it's a story people enjoy reading. Inevitably, I would like it to be a story that people find great meaning from. We've spent the last year, and it will likely be a year and a half, in lockdown, in a time when we've had to give up a lot of the liberties that we've taken for granted. And as such, it can feel as if we're facing a great challenge, which we are. Every challenge is relative to the person who's experiencing it and the time in which it is experienced. When I started reading Furs' diary again and working through the novel over lockdown, it provided for me quite a release. First of all, because I could focus on something that was purely enjoyable. But secondly, because when you read about an individual who went through such lows in his life, and at the time of the novel, he is 24 to 25 years old. I've written this novel from the age of 21, 22 to 27 as I am now. I've seen myself progress through the same age that Furs was when he was in a position where he was leading 750 troops towards German machine guns, whilst I was sitting in the UK delivering my job in the peace and comfort of my own home, worrying and wondering about my own challenges. Sometimes these stories give you perspective, and it gave me perspective on appreciating those little moments of tranquility, those little aspects of life that are actually, on reflection, phenomenal, fantastic, enjoyable. It doesn't take away from the fact that we all face challenges, but what I would love is for people to read this novel and see that there are some challenges that we hope we will never face in our life. I sincerely hope that we never go through another world war, the like of which they experienced in 1915. I sincerely hope that I don't have to lead 750 troops towards a wall of machine gun fire, hoping that some barbed wire in front of me has miraculously been cut by some shells. I hope that I don't face some of the loss of the people I find most dear to me. But I can appreciate those things so much more when I understand that someone, especially one of my own family, went through that. And I think everyone can relate to it. Equally, infusing some of the more positive elements, I hope people read it and go, I wish for that sort of longing, pining, almost heartfelt heartache at that person you think loves you, but you haven't had that first kiss yet. That moment of mutual understanding when you allow your self-control to go for a brief second and you actually take the courage and the plunge to kiss that sweetheart for the first time. And both of you realize, yes, that's the moment we've been waiting for. And so it's exciting to bring this to the world. It's nerve-wracking to see people read your words and to understand that the emotions within that book are very partially my own. And to wonder whether it could have been written better, expressed more broadly, understood more widely. But inevitably, it is exciting that people might take something from it that can help them bring meaning to their own lives. As mentioned previously, I adore history. I think that we've been very lucky to live in a period where people have recorded it. And certainly World War I, there's so much of a record of it that we can really delve into who the people were and what they were experiencing at the time, what they were feeling and thinking. So to me, history is something to be relayed by word of mouth or on the written page. The fact that this is my own family history adds a weight of responsibility to my relaying it to other people. I want to get it right, and I want to transfer it and explain it in a way that people understand and gain meaning from. But I also want to be realistic. It's very easy, and I did this when I started relaying Furz's story, to view it purely positively. Because you do. You never want to admit that perhaps yourself, let alone your friends and family, have failings. And sometimes I would look back on my writing, and I certainly need to do so now, and realize that it's not all positive. It can't all be brilliant. And what I was learning from the diary was his perception of the time, which is where your question about research came in, to understand the reality of a situation and try to factor in different perspectives so it wasn't just one-sided. Because one fear for me was relaying just one tiny proportion of a monumental part of human history in a very one-sided view. So to balance that was a key part of writing this novel for me, to represent a real character honestly and factually, whilst bringing in some fictional elements of my own experience and my emotions, to create someone who was not just appealing but realistic, not too overbearingly positive, but not in a dire situation. Because inevitably, we go through those highs and lows, and bringing this character to people's attention, even though he may be part of my family, is a necessary part of history to me. It's far from me to give advice on authors when I'm only just beginning this journey myself, and I feel like I'll never stop learning on it. And in fact, if I do, I need to start finding other fields to learn in, I think. It's part of the joy of it. But what I've learned over the past 5 or 6 years is that persistence is absolutely critical. This novel for me was a release from my day job, from my 9 to 6, 7, 8, no matter when it finished, job that I did, which I can do and I might do well, but it never felt like I was bringing the value I could bring to the situation. Words, dialogue, storytelling, that's always been my passion. And that's what I'd encourage you to do. If you have a passion, and if you think that is with the written word, the spoken word, then get something down on paper. Record yourself talking about the story, relaying a message, and keep going. Even if you don't think it's very good, even if you're not quite sure where the end goal is, you won't finish anything unless you begin it. And if you begin, you may just find that week on week, you will be writing more, until eventually after a month, a year, 6 years, you've actually got something at the end that is quite refined, and certainly at least contains all the information in your head. And to help you with that, find a safe space. For me, I really struck gold when I moved to Glasgow with work. I'd never moved out of London on this scale before. I went indefinitely to a place which I'd never gone, in an environment I'd never been a part of. And for the first time, separated from most of my friends and family, I sat down on the weekend and thought, what does Ben want to do with his life? Not what do Ben's friends want him to do this weekend, not what are Ben's family going to involve him in. And the answer was, I want to, first of all, go and climb a mountain, which I did, and that was fantastic. But then I thought, I want to go and find a cafe, a really cozy cafe. Nothing special, just a local cafe. And I found this amazing cafe in Glasgow called the Steamy, and the windows did get really steamy on a cold winter's day. And I would sit there for 3-4 hours every Saturday and some Sunday mornings. And I'd get a coffee, and I'd get some eggs on toast, and I'd get to know the staff behind the counter. And I would sit in a corner and just observe life around me for those few hours. And whilst I was observing, I'd be tapping, I'd be writing. There'd be no pressure to make sure I did X amount of words that day or X amount of pages. I would let the words flow as I moved through the diary, occasionally stopping to talk to the people who sat next to me or the staff behind the counter, getting through copious coffees. But because of the comfort I felt in that environment, because of the lack of pressure I put on myself, and because of the fact that life was happening around me, I couldn't help but put that life into my work. And inevitably, the best parts of my novel, which people comment on, are the ones that I wrote in that cafe, surrounded by the buzz of human interaction. Because to me, this is about storytelling. And if people around you are telling stories and you're open to listening, that's what will get your writing out there. So you have to start, and you have to find your place of comfort. And inevitably that turns it from a task into a pleasure. So Furs, Sweethearts and Swan Songs will be released on the 11th of November with pre-orders from the 11th of October. The relevance of that date is that the 11th of November is Remembrance Sunday, or Remembrance Day rather. And the importance of Remembrance Day for this novel is that it relates to the subject matter that we'll be talking about. World War I was a period that we recall every year, quite rightly, because for the first time in a lot of human history, so many people were touched by one war, one event. And you will find very few families, not just in the UK, but across Europe, who have not been touched by that war. The importance for me in releasing the book on that date is to mark the memory of Furs and Furs's colleagues, Furs's friends, Furs's family members, everyone mentioned in that diary, on a day that is designed to remember the sacrifice they made. Furs himself may have survived the war. I wouldn't be here if he hadn't. But many of the people that are in that diary did not. Now, there's far more research you can do about those individuals. There's far more you can understand about whether they had the chance to have families, whether they had the chance to tell their own story to their children and grandchildren. But this is a chance for their story to be revitalized, for their tasks to be retold, for their experiences to be relived through people who have the privileges and societies that we do today, because they put their lives on the line without a second thought and perhaps without a choice. It's important for me that it comes out on that day because you have to remember. You can't block out history. You can't rewrite history. You can only present it in a way that you think represents the feelings of the time. And if people can take a look at that book on the 11th of November, consider the actions that individuals had to take 105, 106 years ago, and remember what they did and what they went through. And remember that you were once 24 like furs, then that is a really important thing that I would like people to be able to do.
If you enjoyed the video and would like to watch more, hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. Also, please see the description box below for a link to our website and other social media platforms.